participants. I am Ender Yazgan Buldun, the Dean of the Faculty of Fine Arts and Design in İzmir University of Economics. I welcome you all. This is a webinar by established by the İzmir Chamber of Commerce, and there will be you have seen the digital
İzmir Ticaret Odası, Akdeniz Ticaret ve Sanayi Odaları Birliği tarafından 6. Akdeniz Tekstil Forumu'nun Meditex'in ev sahibi olarak tayin edilmiştir. Bu platformun
This platform is planned to be
preparation for this forum, we have organized a panel such as this. In today's meeting, ready-to-wear clothing and clothes, geography, green textile, circular fashion, textile 4.0, clothable technologies, technique textiles, protective textiles will be discussed in this panel. And now I'd like to give the floor to Vice Chairman of Board of Directors of İzmir Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Emre Kızılgüneşliler. Distinguished representatives of the sector, chairman, distinguished members of the Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar. Together with you today, we will discuss the future of the textile sector.
This webinar is also a preliminary meeting for the 6th Mediterranean Textile Forum, which is our chamber has been entitled to organize before the Mediterranean Chambers of Commerce and Industry, ESCAM. Meditex is one of the most influential international events organized for the textile industry, with the participation of countries in the Mediterranean basin since 2005. It offers a unique network opportunity between both ESCAM member institutions and textile sector representatives operating in these countries. We plan to organize this important event, which we could not find the opportunity to realize in 2020 due to the pandemic, within the framework of a 2-day program consisting of serial meetings, conferences, and workshops. Dear guests, as we all know, the textile industry is one of the sectors that play a critical role in the industrialization of countries and the development of welfare. With the added value it creates, employment and industrial entrepreneurship, it makes a serious contribution to the development of the welfare of countries. Millions of producers and billions of consumers in the world are connected to the textile sector through the production and consumption system. In these systems, thousands of companies are directly affected by the textile industry with raw material supply, production, transportation and consumption networks. In the European Union alone, there are 171,000 companies, 1.7 million workforce, and a turnover of 178 billion euros with 2018 figures. The textile and ready-to-wear clothing sector in Turkey is quite high. The direct ratio of the textile and ready-to-wear clothing sectors in the economy is calculated as 4.8%. But this ratio can go up to the range of 8 to 9%. And almost 7% of the employment in the is in the textile and ready-to-wear clothing sectors. Most importantly, among the registered employment data, it is the second sector with the highest female employment after education. In this context, it can be predicted that in the post-COVID period, suppliers maybe tend to be selected from closer regions, and it can be expected that there will be an increase in mobility in the sector, at least in the producer side. Dear sector representatives, the textile and ready-to-wear sector is an industry with a high environmental and social footprint with its weight in production, consumption, and foreign trade. In the coming period, there will be increasing demands for changes in the environmental footprint of the textile and ready-to-wear clothing industry. So changes will need to be made, especially in practices that accelerate climate change. Therefore, the textile sector is one of the priority sectors selected by the EU Commissions for circular economic applications. In this regard, soon, the Republic of Turkey Ministry of International Trade Agreements and the EU Directorate General, Executive Vice President Bahar Güçlü, will be getting more detailed information. There are two processes that are critical in the textile and ready-to-wear clothing industry, which are technological innovation and digital transformation. So we will even learn about the social innovation processes in second-hand use of textile and ready-to-wear products. Those who invest in technological and social innovation will become industry leaders. Integration of advanced technologies to physical and digital systems that will increase product efficiency and reduce environmental footprint, active use of these technologies, dissemination of tools and process of innovative business models, and as a result, the emergence of smart products whose environmental and social effects can be monitored and their final effects through e-commerce. So the digital transformation will need to be used actively in reaching consumers. In other words, the importance of digital transformation is well understood.
This transformation requires ecosystems to complement each other rather than distinguishing them. So in order to have maximum benefit from digital transformations, we need to reconsider the definitions of ecosystem definitions. The partners of ecosystems, partnerships towards digital transformation, new structures and new skills should be developed. Distinguished guests, during this pandemic, we can overcome these challenges through innovation, through working together. We should be leading institutions. The Mediterranean region we are in has a logistic advantage and strategic importance for the textile and ready-to-wear sector with its geographical subject and raw material richness. We can turn the textile talent of our region into a brand and marketing element. We should allocate time and resources to digital transformation, technological talent development, R&D and P&D activities and follow processes that combine design and technology. We know that there is always a way out for innovative and creative minds. As İzmir Chamber of Commerce, we are ready to organize meetings and activities that bring stakeholders together in order to increase the dialogue, business and cooperation between the countries in the region. Together, we can work on diversifying and expanding the market on a regional and international scale. We expect all of you to contribute and participate in our Meditex Mediterranean Textile Forum, which I mentioned at the beginning of my speech. I thank you all for your participation. I sincerely hope that we have a productive webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kızıl Güneşler. Now we are going to listen to Mr. Omar Moro, Vice President of ASKÖME.
Sanıyorum bağlantıda bir sorun.
I think we have a connection problem. That's why we will move on to the speech of Mr. Abdullah Salkım. In this section, we have 4 valuable speakers. Each speaker has 10 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please write your questions on our website. We have a form for questions. Now, I'd like to give the floor to the member of Board of Executives of İzmir Chamber of Commerce, head of the fashion, textile and confectionery site. But I'd like to give you some information. As we know, the pandemic process impacted all the sectors, manufacturing processes, customer demands, and turned all of us into a new order. During the pandemic, ready-to-wear and textile sector is one of the sectors that dropped in demand to the highest, and experts say that the turnover of 2020 compared to 2019 estimate that there was a 30% drop. Also, the orders by European origin companies had dropped their orders by 45%, and during January and April we have seen 28% drop compared to the previous year. The Turkish Statistics Institution reported that in manufacturing sector there has been 7.5% and 14% drop in textile in April, and in May it still dropped, and for June there is an estimation of similar figures. In such a process, textile and confectionery companies, how can they turn this into an advantage? In which areas can they turn their attention to? So the transformation of confectionery sector during this pandemic will be the topic of Mr. Abdullah Salkım. Mr. Emre Kızılgüneşler, Vice President of İzmir Chamber of Commerce Executive Board, ASKÖME Vice President Omar Moro, Distinguished Burak Sertbaş, Aegean Ready-to-Wear Clothing and Confectionery Exporters Association, Chair of Executive Board, Ministry of Commerce, International Agreements and EU, Directorate General, Vice General Manager Bahar Güçlü, İzmir University of Economics, Dean of the Faculty of Fine Arts and Design, Professor Dr. Ender Yazgan, Bulgun, and distinguished participants, I welcome you all.
As we all know, the Turkish textile and ready-to-wear clothing industry is one of the locomotive sectors of the economy of our country and our city, with its weight in production and employment. It provides a net foreign currency inflow to the economy, with its feature of being mostly export-oriented. The share of the sector coming from export events in İzmir is 16.3%. In other words, 1 out of every 6 products released from customs in our city is a textile product. The most important force behind this success is the experience of our companies, high capacity and unique sectoral clusters that make the sector dynamic. Mimar Kemalettin Fashion Center, Buca ENG Clothing Organized Industrial Zone, and Fashion, Textile and Ready-to-Wear Clothing sites, where I am the president, are the driving forces of the sector in our city. When we look at the centers in question, we see that Mimar Kemalettin is a region where our companies operating in the fields of wedding dresses, suits, and evening dresses are clustered. Fashion, textile and confectionery site is one of the largest clusters bazaars of our country, where 11,000 people are employed in a wide range from home textiles to carpets, from fabric wholesalers to embroiderers. And Buca ENG Clothing Organized Industrial Zone is located as a first in Turkey specialized in ready-to-wear clothing industrial zones. So, dear participants, during my professional life, they asked my opinion about the future of the industry in the meetings I held in almost every medium related to the ready-to-wear clothing industry. With the pandemic period, I started to hear similar questions more frequently. We have to consider the effects of pandemic on the sector in two dimensions, namely domestic and foreign markets. As far as the domestic market is concerned, the ready-to-wear clothing industry was among the sectors most vulnerable to the pandemic process. Especially, our companies operating in the bridal gowns, evening dresses, and groom wear sectors had a very difficult time with their sales coming to a halt as a result of the cancellation of weddings. The stagnation we experienced in the domestic market also manifested itself in our exports. In the first 5 months of 2020, our exports shrank by 26% compared to the same period of 2019. However, with the normalization process, we can say that the recovery in the sector started to manifest itself. Compared to 2019 figures, we achieved a good momentum in exports, with an increase of 25% in June 2020 and 8.4% in July. The momentum we have achieved in June and July means that we will close 2020 with the least damage possible. We have to put aside the negativities and look ahead and realize the opportunities that our current era offers us. The increasing importance of trade with nearby geographies offers us many opportunities for cooperation, especially between countries in the Mediterranean basin. Distinguished guests, in exports, we should focus on high value-added products instead of fabricated production and focus on increasing our export volume with quality rather than quantity. At this point, I would like to draw particular attention to the importance of the wedding dresses and evening dresses industry in İzmir. Our city meets 70% of its production in Turkey wedding dress. We export bridal gowns to more than 40 countries in a wide geography, from Europe to the Middle East, America to Africa. Thanks to our manufacturers who move themselves forward in the field of original design every year, İzmir is a name that is mentioned among important bridal gown centers such as Milan and Barcelona. Of course, we should not forget the share of the İzmir Chamber of Commerce in this success. Our chamber contributes to the clustering activities of our members operating in the bridal gown, grooms, and evening dress sectors, with the projects supported by the Ministry of Commerce since 2000 2013 and leads the increase in international competitiveness. Thanks to the strong structure of the wedding dress industry, we can gain a significant advantage in the export of high value added products in our city in a short time. We see that the consumer habits are changing rapidly and the retail stores are being replaced by online marketplaces. The new generation buyers are more technology oriented than ever before and are eager to get the product they want to have. The transformation begins at this point exactly. The companies need to reposition themselves, take care to have multi-channel sales strategies and innovative tools. I want to make this clear. The review of our sales methods, our primary goal should be to achieve a balance between store sales and e-commerce in the short term and to implement the e-commerce weighted sales method in the medium and long term. E-commerce is a powerful catalyst for both our companies and our national economies. The integration of information and communication technologies with the business world allows for lower costs while increasing productivity and customer engagement. It is possible for us to turn to e-commerce even in the bridal gowns, evening dresses and wedding suit sector, which are considered indispensable for sale from the store. We cannot move forward into the future with old-fashioned business methods. We must make possible a business life independent of space and people. Intelligent automation, learning machines, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence are no longer concepts that we can stay away from. We must constantly pursue innovation in order to maintain and increase our international competitiveness. The process times, error rates, the effect of machine failures on production, the product browse and purchase rates by the customer in the store, and which products consumers spend more time on online shopping. With such data, we can achieve speed and stable efficiency in our business processes with machines that offer us such data, learn and master this data as they repeat. For example, monitoring data collected from all machines involved in production with IoT technology, analyzing productivity calculations presented with real-time graphics regardless of location on our smartphone in seconds, optimizing our shipping times with RFID tags, and we reduce our sample costs with 3D printers. They are all the digital transformation moves that we can easily adapt to our business processes with existing technologies. The important thing is to keep in mind that this transformation is not a process that begins and ends, but a state of ongoing improvement. We should empower each other by focusing on sectoral and regional cooperation, bringing to the forefront of solidarity instead of competition, and design new roadmaps together. In this context, I present my respects to all our speakers and participants with my wishes for a productive webinar. As a factor of our daily life, the global textile industry is growing, keeps growing, and the ratios are much higher than the expected.
To the medical textile, certain technical textiles who will give a solution, provide a solution, and the high-performance textiles, the functional textiles, will all have a bigger demand. In the year 2018, the technical textiles export has risen 18%, and in the export ranking, Turkey is one of the biggest exporters. Now we have the head of the Exporters Union shall be giving a discourse. Thank you very much. But first, I think Mr. Ömer is going to be with us, so you can give the word to him first, and then I can continue with my speech. Okay, then we'll connect to our invited speaker, Mr. Omar Moro from France. He is the Vice President of Chamber of Commerce, Mediterranean Chamber of Commerce. Actually, we couldn't be connected to him. Now we'll give the word to Mr. Burak. Distinguished residents, distinguished vice president, distinguished guests, I salute you all. So today I shall be talking to you about the technical textiles, but also I'd like to talk to you about the supply chain and the situation of the global supply chain as well. First of all, let me talk about the situation of global supply chain. In the year 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, in many of the industries, we had really a hard time. And textile industry was one of the industries that were most negatively impacted. And so due to the deterioration in the supply chain, we had really difficult days. And in 2020, 20% to 30% of less income is expected. With the pandemic, there has also been differences in the tendencies of the consumers. So the environmental sensitivity and it shall be popular after in the post-pandemic period as well. So these have been topics that we have been handling for a while, but we were thinking that we would have time to solve them all, but now they are waiting for a more rapid solution. So the decreasing demand and the closure of the stores are problems that are awaiting to be solved. So it had already started prior to the pandemic. But the pandemic just accelerated this process. The long periods of supply and also the decrease in the orders have all deteriorated this sector. So we are looking for a more sustainable, more environmental friendly solutions. And at this point, the COVID-19 pandemic can be seen as an opportunity in the textile industry, which will change our habits in that respect. So after the pandemic, brands will reassess their supply channels. It may also be possible to diversify the countries to which they're supplied, taking into account the risks, costs, and flexibility. In the post-pandemic period, I think global supply will shift from China to other countries. In addition, Turkey's post-pandemic period, the countries situated in the Mediterranean basin, which I predict will increase their importance for European brands. Can you see the figures that I'm sharing with you? There is a survey that a research company has carried out, and it seems that they will be doing their supplies from the region close to them, and which means that the Turkey's share will rise to 29%. And these are basically the figures prior to the pandemic. So in the post-pandemic period, I think that European customers will prioritize a close supply. And I think in a short while it will be more advantageous for Turkey. The COVID-19 outbreak revealed the importance of establishing a strategic cooperation between the supplier and the purchaser in the face of epidemics and other crises in order to create a healthy supply chain. Digitalization has become more and more important in the fashion industry in the post-pandemic era. In the new era, companies in the fashion industry will be able to survive as long as they become digital. So innovation will always be our focus in all walks of life, such as the supply chain and all the other walks of life. So the product development and supply chain needs to be redefined, and our style of doing business needs to be redefined. We have to be responding more rapidly, and we have to be providing solutions more rapidly. So I have basically shared with you the trends. And another topic that comes to the shore is the technical textiles. And we do understand that we need to take more steps in this region, especially in this industry of medical textiles. There is more and more needed for the textiles in that area. So throughout the pandemic, there was a huge demand for masks. But in our country, where we have a very good infrastructure for medical textiles, we were able to supply the whole world with these kinds of supplies. And the technical textiles have a huge potential in the world, and let's take a look at that. The technical textile export has risen to $107 billion, which means a 9.9% increase. So we are the 19th biggest exporter of technical textiles. But our share in the whole world is only amounts to 1.6%. And so the second one is Germany, and their share is 8.4%. So with the advancements throughout the pandemic, and with the increasing demand throughout the pandemic, we do believe that we shall be receiving more demands in this area. An increase in the production and manufacture of technical textiles have happened. So our export of technical textiles has risen 64% in this year. And in the first month of this year, in the Aegean region, it has risen 87%. So Aegean region has a rising ranking more than the rest of Turkey. And there are the single-use gear, the masks, the surgery masks have basically created that positive impact on the textile industry export, technical textiles export, and 2,082% and 4,643% have been the amount of rise overall in Turkey and in the Aegean region, respectively. And so long as the pandemic period is the case, we think that there will be more and more demand for such supplies. As for our technical textile exports, the Center for Research over Technical Textiles have been established in 2014. And let me mention a few words about this institution. So it's basically an institution that improves the competition power of our enterprises, and it basically promotes research in this area, and it provides the human resources in this area while providing also the know-how requested. And by the year of 2019, we started the tests and 2015 we started the test and analysis period, and in 2016 we started with doing the trials, and in 2017 it took up legal status, being a company accredited by the ISO standards. TechFan has done lots and lots of trainings throughout the year of 2018, and they have provided numerous tests for this area, and they have also provided consultancy services in this area. In the scope of the technical research and development work, they have carried out 34 research and development projects, And with those activities of TexFan and also with the work of the other companies that work in the technical textiles, this area has been a promising area for the future. We have basically got the fibers, and we are now producing the textiles and clothing. Apart from that, TexFan is also active in the field of medicine. They are providing help for the treatment of atopic diseases, and they are basically leading projects that will provide supplies for the treatment of this disease. And also protective textile products are also being produced, and these are among the projects that we're working on. As for technical textiles, we can subsume it under 12 headings: industrial textiles, construction textiles, geological textiles, home textiles, medical textiles, the transport textiles, ecological textiles, packaging textiles, protective textiles, sportive textiles. The TexMer has prioritized its work under those 12 headlines, and we have focused on the protective, medical and sportive textiles at TexMer. So TexMer has an infrastructure that is developed and designed to work in to focus on these areas, and it was an opportunity for us that the post-pandemic era has coincided with our focus in those areas. And in the area of the technical textiles, as a matter of the advancements in this era, we have accelerated our work. So the ready-made clothing, our ready-made clothing department is carrying out this project together with the other departments, and they have given basically more importance to bring about projects in this field. For the developments that shall be lived in the ready-made clothing area, we need to have an innovative approach, and we need to foresee them. So let me finish here, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to have them. And thanks to all that have organized this conference. So European Commission has gathered in 2019, and they have basically announced the plans, and they are opting to mitigate the carbon emissions. And in this respect, it's important that the sustainable and the demand for the sustainable and green products are increasing. Slow cycle, recyclable products are now getting more and more importance. Now, we shall have Miss Bahar Güçlü from Ankara, who is the Vice President General of the European Union work and European Union and the international conventions at the Ministry of Commerce. Distinguished guests, I salute you all, and I'm happy to be together.
Sunumumu paylaşma imkanı olacak mı bilmiyorum ama belki oradan arkadaşlar açabilirse devam etme imkanımız olabilir. Ben yine başlayayım o süreçte. Değerli hocam.
Like our professor mentioned, the European Green Deal announced on December 11, 2019, foreseeing that all policies of the EU in the coming years will be shaped around the axis of climate change in a range of areas, from industry to finance, from transportation to energy. In order to achieve these ambitious goals set, the EU must implement policy changes in all areas without any delays. Therefore, it is extremely important that we evaluate the challenges and opportunities created by the European Green Deal for the sector in this webinar, where we discuss issues related to the future of the textile industry. These developments in the EU market, which is the most important export market for the countries in the Mediterranean basin, are not only in terms of exports to the EU, but also in terms of the integration of the sector into value chains and the protection and strengthening of its place in international markets, and given the potential of the EU to affect the legislation and policies on a global scale. So, I want to mention the areas that will be affected, that could be affected from the EU Green Deal. So, when we look at the areas where the Green Deal can affect the textile industry, I think we can gather them under three headings. These three headings, starting with carbon regulation mechanisms at the border. The other one is the circular economy and the EU's new textile strategy. And the third one is the EU's horizontal regulations, such as transportation, packaging, waste management, that are not directly specific to the sector. I want to focus on the first two of them. The first of these is the border carbon regulations that have perhaps the most commercial impact in the international arena, and which the EU plans to implement to prevent carbon leakage. While the proposal regarding to this mechanism is planned to be announced in the second half of the 2021, the target of its implementation by 2023 within the scope of the EU budget has been set. With its border carbon regulation mechanisms, the EU aims to determine the import price for selected sectors by taking into account the carbon content of the goods. And as you know, in order to determine the design, methodology and the sectoral scope of the mechanisms, the EU started a public consultation process in July, following the feedback process it started in March. In terms of the design of the mechanisms, carbon tax on both imported and locally selected products, imposing a new carbon custom tax on imported products, or implementation of the EU's emission trading system or importers purchasing allowances from a separate pool. These are all among the alternatives evaluated by the Commission. And as the Ministry, we follow this issue very closely within the scope of the Customs Union relationship between the EU and our country. And at this stage, I can say that it's extremely important to design the mechanism in question very carefully. And indeed, the suitability of such agreements with the free trade agreements between WTO, EU, Turkey, Customs Union and the countries in the Mediterranean basin is a critical issue. On the other hand, in accordance with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and relative capabilities of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, it is also important that countries contribute to climate change efforts in line with their capacities, taking into account the historical responsibilities of countries in greenhouse gas emissions. It is foreseen that the possible scope of regulation will be determined according to the carbon leakage risk of the sectors.
de yer aldığını, dolayısıyla ilk aşamada olmasa bile bunların da AB'nin değerlendirdiği aday sektörler.
So In this direction, although the mechanism is expected to be implemented for energy-intensive sectors with the highest share of greenhouse gas emissions in the first stage, the preparation and bending of textile fibers and finishing textile products in the EU's list of sectors that are at risk of carbon leakage, we see that these activities are also taking place. So on the other hand, due to the environmental footprint rather than the carbon footprint, the circular economy stands out as the priority area of the textile sector in the European Green Deal studies. In the circular economy field, the focus of the EU's goals is to increase durability, recycling, reuse and repair, while implementing concrete measures to reduce wastes. In fact, it would not be correct to say that the issues dealt with in the circular economy have come to the EU agenda with the Green Deal. With the Green Deal, as a stronger policy will has emerged to make the practices that have been on the agenda of the EU and some member countries for a while in the sustainability debates in the textile sector. The use of hazardous chemicals in the textile industry and the release of microplastics, the high natural resource intensity of the agricultural production process of natural fibers, the very limited global scale of textiles used in waste management and making new products by recycling are among the main factors that negatively affect the environmental footprint of the sector. And for this reason, the steps planned to be taken in the textile sector, which is among the priority sectors in the EU's Circular Economy Action Plan, are expected to target these environmental problems. Specific to the textile industry, in order to realize these goals, it is aimed to introduce a new sustainable product framework in 2021 through a comprehensive EU textile strategy. When we look at the list of this new policy, the efficiency of energy-related products is being extended to the other sectors, and this approach aims to reduce the environmental footprint of textiles through product design. For this purpose, the material efficiency requirements for the circular design, limiting the use of hazardous chemicals and setting targets for the use of recycled content in production are all included. And it is aimed to facilitate access to reuse and repair services. These are all the foreseen studies and activities, of course, but all these issues will create significant changes for the manufacturers in the process, from the fiber used by the sector to the production processes and the completion of the life cycle of the product offered to the customer. So due to the costs this will create on the manufacturers, the realization of these goals requires a significant change in consumer preferences based on the fast fashion. For this purpose, the EU aims to create an ecosystem in which its value chains and consumers will be guided within the framework of green transformation goals. And alternative tools to achieve this include mandatory inclusion of information such as the environmental footprint of the product on the product labels, and creating sustainability labels similar to energy labeling and presenting them to consumers with digital tools, improving the methodology for measuring environmental footprint and ensuring the control of consumer statements. Within the scope of the EU's new textile strategy, there are also targets to support the product as a service model and to expand the responsibilities of the manufacturer. And all these policy changes aiming to reduce the environmental footprint in the textile industry also point out that this sector will become an increasingly regulated sector. And of course, it should be kept in mind that some of these changes can be implemented in a way that goes beyond what is foreseen in the legislation through the value chains and consumer preferences of which countries in the Mediterranean basin are parts.
Buradaki konumlarını da ciddi
Therefore, the environmental footprints of the products in the textile sector will bring along a process in which the ability of companies to adapt to green transformation will make a difference and may seriously affect the positions of the companies in the EU market. Evaluating what all these developments mean from a broad perspective essentially gives us the necessary framework in the process of determining a roadmap for the future.
artan STA'larıyla giderek erozyona uğruyor.
The active trade policy pursued by the EU in recent years has gradually eroded the access of countries in the Mediterranean basin to the EU markets without customs duties. The origin rules under the preferential and autonomous regimes of the EU are also becoming more flexible. And on the other hand, it would not be wrong to expect the level of meeting the sustainability criteria to gain increasing importance. While the COVID-19 pandemic brought world trade to a halt, it also brought discussions about restructuring global value chains. So these developments, combined with the EU's search for clear strategic autonomy, create an opportunity for the EU to return to its territory and the Mediterranean basin to regain importance. And although the measures expected from the companies as a result of the steps to be taken in the upcoming period and their reflections on the textile industry seem to be factors that create cost increase and pose a risk on exports, it is necessary to focus on the opportunities created by the situation, looking from the broad perspective I have just mentioned. This process will bring along a transition from fast fashion, which requires capturing rapidly changing consumer preferences with low price pressure, to a consumption understanding that will allow sustainable and higher value-added production.
Kullanımı ve bunlara yönelik Ar-Ge çalışmaları.
In addition to the initiatives carried out by the representatives of the sector on a voluntary basis in the European Union, we see that the EU sector has initiated studies aimed at adapting the principles of sustainable product initiative with improved collaborations and projects. Before ending my words, I would like to emphasize that we aim to support both the work in our country and to develop international cooperation in this field by following the issue very closely in the cooperation of the public-private sector within the working group established with the participation of all relevant institutions under the coordination of our ministry. Thank you so much.
Biz çok teşekkür ediyoruz Bahar Hanım bu verdiğiniz değerli ve güzel bilgiler için. Sanıyorum şu anda Ömer Maro'ya bağlanabileceğiz. Bir bağlantı sorunu yaşıyoruz sanıyorum Ömer Bey. Bağlanabiliyor muyuz? Bizi duyuyor musunuz acaba? Evet, sizi duyabiliyorum. Teşekkür ediyorum Sayın Başkan. Selamun Aleyküm.
Autorité, mesdames et messieurs.
Hanımefendiler,
distinguished guests, as the head of ASCAMEL, I'm honored to represent my association here in this webinar. And this is a common organization by İzmir Chamber of Commerce and ASCAMEL. Now I would like to briefly talk about ASCAMEL. It is an international organization, the Mediterranean Commerce and Trade Chambers Association, and it covers 23 countries from different regions. It defends the interests and rights of thousands of companies. It is the most important representative of the private sector in the Mediterranean. And the Meditex, the textile forum, was a very important activity carried out, which was carried out in different Mediterranean countries. This year, we will cooperate with İzmir Chamber of Commerce, and we have organized Meditex. This will be an infrastructure for the forthcoming year. I would like to thank İzmir Chamber of Commerce for all their efforts. Even in the pandemic days, they have successfully conducted this organization. Textile sector, after the pandemic, after COVID-19, it has encountered many challenges like the whole world, and textile is very significant as a sector around the world. It has always been so. And it's a very broad sector, a historical one, a strategic one for many Mediterranean countries, Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, Lebanon, Spain. And in the last decades, Mediterranean has become a unique textile example for production processes, for culture. Many investors have preferred this region. The Mediterranean has many advantages. There's fast production, fast communication, logistics, infrastructure, also growth and employment can easily be increased, and also the development of SMEs as well as the accessibility to quality textile products are significant. Textile has went through many developments, and after the agreements in Marrakesh, signed in Marrakesh, things have changed a lot. The pandemic have affected the developments, of course, unfortunately. However, it's good to see that we have received the service of Ministries of Health. Textile will be strengthened after this crisis. They will change their production models and become more environmentalist, more sustainable, using new technologies. I think it will achieve this. In the pandemic, it is difficult for the textile sector to survive. Factories are closed down, workers are told to stay home, the chains are broken, supply chains are broken, and many workers are unemployed. And with this perspective, we need cooperation, we need to act together, especially we would invite governments to protect the rights and welfare of workers and companies. And ASCAMEL is planning new development models, and this plan aims to develop regional economy in Mediterranean, and it aims to help support the companies that are negatively affected. We need to consider sustainability models, growth models, because as Mediterranean, textile is a significant pillar for us. Green economies, innovation, and SMEs are significant for us. Textile has a very important role, and the reaction to crisis was also positive. In order to continue, I would like to say there are a few initiatives and suggestions that I'll present. Askamel has included these in its plan. In order to make use of the Mediterranean's unique position, we can take into account these suggestions. Delocalization. We need to take into account decentralization, delocalization, and take into account local production, regional production. And we should establish more resistant and shorter supply chains. Emphasizing the value of textile and providing communication in media for this, and making this with the cooperation of the private and the public sector, taking into account respect for environment and the consumer. We aim to change shopping habits towards shopping from Mediterranean, and also we aim to prevent fake products. Also, we would like to protect unregistered workers, decrease the raw material from Far East and concentrate on the Mediterranean, and also take into account the fashion sector with less carbon emission in a more sustainable way. Also protect worker rights. If a fashion company, if the fashion industry would like to consider the upcoming regions, they need to join sustainable fashion movements and joint ventures in the Mediterranean, and this will make competition possible. Also, for investors, we need to create platforms. Especially, we should make them have cooperation, have communication with interested companies, as well as encourage students towards sustainable fashion if they're interested. And we can do this by protecting textile companies. I think the future of textile sector is bright. We can consolidate and strengthen our position. For this, we need cooperation between countries, between companies. We all need to work together and integrate our efforts. Askamel will be at your service for these aims. I hope the webinar will be fruitful for everyone. Thank you, Mr. President. Your message was very important. We have one more guest. We would like to invite to the floor Mr. Hayati Ertuğ, and the topic will be about increasing transparency, reliability, and this will contribute positively to the supply chain. The future's market will depend on the competitive ability of the countries.
edilecektir. Şimdiki konuğumuz Hayati Ertuğrul.
And now we would like to give the floor to Hayati Ertuğrul.
Tedarik zincirinde yakın coğrafya
He will be talking about the importance of communication between countries during the pandemic.
Ben öncelikle tüm konuşmacıları ve dinleyicileri saygıyla selamlıyorum.
I would like to greet all speakers and listeners.
Kapsamında gerçekleştirilen uluslararası
I would like to thank the Mediterranean Chamber of Commerce and Industry Union and all stakeholders for participating in the international webinar held within the scope of the 89th İzmir International Fair. Asian Clothing Manufacturers Association is a sectoral non-governmental organization that has been operating successfully for 28 years.
dijital süreçlere adapte olmak için
We continue our work as an association to perceive the changing world after coronavirus and to adapt to digital processes.
hazır olan tekstil ve hazır giyim,
Textile and ready-to-wear clothing, which are labor-intensive sectors among the labor-intensive sectors that make the most important contribution to our country's exports, are among the sectors most affected by the pandemic. Our industry and our country have taken very rapid steps in order not to remain behind the transforming world due to the pandemic. One of the most important of these is the webinar we're doing now. Distances have been shortened and the search for common solutions to global problems has increased. Ready-to-wear clothing industry is one of the most important sectors for Turkey's economy's investment, production, employment, value added and export indicators. Turkey in 2019 has made $17.5 billion in ready-to-wear clothing exports, and it is to find $26 billion with exports of textile raw materials. It's known that 70% of ready-to-wear exports in our country are made to EU countries.
Our commercial activities with Europe, which slowed down after the coronavirus pandemic, started to accelerate again. The ready-to-wear clothing and confectionery export figures in the Aegean region in June and July are an indicator of this. In August, we expect to catch up with last year's figures.
alışkanlıkların değiştiği bu dönemde
In this period, when brands and consumers' habits change, the digitalization of design and product development processes in the ready-to-wear and textile industries increases efficiency. When looking at digitalization in the ready-made clothing industry, many items such as design and collection preparation should be taken into account. As companies accelerated this process during the pandemic, they increased their productivity and had the opportunity to respond quickly to demands. In the pandemic period, although there are several cancellations experienced globally, the manufacturer has managed to minimize delays in Turkey. Sustainability, flexibility, and fast service in supply continuous improvement by using innovative thinking and technology. Such business models to adapt rapidly to change will be the vision of new era for Turkey's textile and ready-to-wear clothing firms. In many of Mediterranean countries, ready-to-wear exports are in the first or second place. As it is known, in the early 1970s, European brands were making their supplies from countries in the near geography. But at the beginning of the 21st century, this changed for the clothing industry, and the supply chain shifted towards the Far East countries, especially China. Although not in terms of volume, the Mediterranean countries are the most preferred countries in the production, of diversity, production quality, and value-added products. Turkey is also included in the forefront of these preferences. With the pandemic, the supply chain entered a restructuring process. The importance of the supply chain is increasing between close countries such as Europe and countries on the Mediterranean coast. We see that important steps have been taken in this direction. These natural clusters, Turkey is ready to assume an important role. Turkey's biggest advantage is that it can respond quickly to demand. For this to be sustainable, we must prepare our infrastructure and move forward towards digitalization.
tercih edilmektedir. Fast fashion'dan slow fashion'a geçiş gözlemleniyor. Bu çok önemli.
The first determining factor among the supplier countries is the labor force and production costs. Consumer preferences are changing. Healthy, life-oriented and functional products are preferred more. There is a transition from fast fashion to slow fashion. Consumption habits are increasing from digital platforms. And in this context, sustainability gains importance day by day. Traceability also gains importance, and it is preferred to have a low carbon footprint in production and transportation.
Paris'te imzaladıkları
And suppliers are making preparations in this direction. Under the Fashion Pact, the Fashion Agreement, which 56 companies representing 250 brands signed the Paris at the G7 summit in 2019. They are united in environmental goals such as climate change and sustainability. So,
azaltılması hedefi
the world-renowned fashion brands that join forces for a sustainable world expect their suppliers to comply with the same conditions. The goal of reducing carbon emissions also brings the supply from nearby geographies, increasing resource efficiency, transparency in the supply chain, modernizing the infrastructure with the new investments, improving working conditions are important factors that increase productivity. Increasing our relations with close countries will affect our country positively. The increase in regional and local brands will also progress in harmony with the manufacturers in our country. So the fact that cheap production is no longer the most decisive criterion, quality comes to the fore, and transparency in the production process will make our producers preferred. In this context, a shift from globalization to regionalization is anticipated for sustainable, fast and qualified supply chains. Our country will continue to play an important role in ready-to-wear production with its geographical location that facilitates the management of logistics process.
ayrıca ülkeler arasında imzalanan protokoller sayesinde tekstil ve hazır giyim ihracatında cazip fırsatlar yakalayarak
Thanks to the protocols signed between countries, the progress is being made in international trade by capturing attractive opportunities in textile and ready-to-wear exports. For example, the free trade agreement with Morocco entered into force in 2006. The two countries see textiles, the ready-made clothing and sub-industries as complementary industries, not competitors, and business partnerships are formed due to the opportunity to supply at reasonable prices. Similar examples are experienced with other Mediterranean countries. It is stated that the state will make significant investments in the textile sector in Egypt, which is an important cotton producer for North Africa and the Middle East. Collaborations with fairs and trade delegations will continue to increase.
gerçekten bu çok önemli. 35 yıldır
While the ready-to-wear and textile industry is constantly changing its place in the world, it has become one of the permanent sectors in our country, which has been increasing in density and diversity for 35 years in global markets. The biggest reason for this is that it has made significant improvements in terms of mechanization, along with raw materials, semi-finished products, and the end products. World ready-to-wear exports were around $473.5 billion in 2019. In 2019, 20.1% of the world's total ready-to-wear imports were realized by the USA and 9% realized by Germany. In a period of global trade wars, restriction of international trade, proliferation of protectionist measures, and epidemics affecting the world, such as the coronavirus, it has become even more important to create new economic opportunities. The regional collaborations have become more meaningful and more important. In this process, we attach great importance to this unity as the industry. Thank you, Mr. Ertuğrul, for your speech. Now we want to move on to question and answer forum. And I want to direct your questions to our speakers.
There's a transformation from fast fashion to slow fashion. Sustainability is more important, and we aim to produce more local products. Localization has become more important, and ready to wear. What will happen to ready to wear products? I think they really are going through a challenging process. Will they go towards technical textiles, or will they focus on a niche product? What kind of base will they encounter, and what kind of cooperation can be established with Mediterranean countries? Yes, please, Burak Sertbaş. The market needs to be diversified. We will diversify the market, and one of our expectations is to decrease production to Far East. And it will be necessary for all customers to have production in closer countries to avoid any difficulties. Maybe our way of production will change, but we will possibly reach a similar amount, a similar capacity. Europe is our biggest market. We are the closest production country to Europe. So Europe won't give up on us, I think. Great. Emre Bey, would you like to say anything? I have a further remark. As I mentioned in my speech, Mediterranean countries have advantages. Spain, Tunisia, Italy, Turkey, and even Portugal, because it's an importer country too. We need to improve cooperation, and also the chain companies have realized the importance of stock costs, because especially in their products they purchase from the Far East, they have encountered many challenges and have had many losses. But especially chain markets, chain companies in the Mediterranean have planned beforehand, planned in advance, and I think they have become stronger in fashion. I think the reactions of these of such companies will turn towards purchasing from closer countries, nearby countries. And for Turkey, this is an obstacle because there is Europe near us, but for us, Far East America, South America is out of the game. So EU and the UK take a big share from Turkey's production. And I think we need to improve cooperation with other chambers of commerce in European and Mediterranean countries. When we say local, in fact, we are not talking about only Turkey, but also the Mediterranean basin and Europe. We need to focus on them, I think. Thank you. And Abdullah Bey. And moreover, in Europe, Turkey is unique in wedding gown production. There is no country producing wedding dresses. For instance, Italy produces only 3% of the bridal gowns that they sell. The purchases from China, Far East should be directed to Turkey, towards Turkey. Our presidents are working towards this. And Hayrettin Bey, sorry, Hayati Bey. Yes, I agree with my colleagues. I have a few more things to say. Sustainability is significant and supporting each other is significant. And with innovative approaches, using technology in a sustainable way is important. And in addition to the presidents, I would like to say a few technical details. Sustainability and having innovative approaches and making use of the technology, aiming at sustainability, making use of business models, adapting to fast adaptation to change, and for the new period, preparing a new vision. So these are important technically. The companies that are ready for this, I think such companies will be stronger after the pandemic. One of the speakers said that the textile and ready-wear sector in the Far East and 29% will be moved to other countries, they said. And Burak Bey said Turkey's place in the world is 1.6%. I think the use of capacity is significant. Before the pandemic, the use of capacity was between 83 and 85%, and we can increase this half or 1 point, so maybe we can reach 2%. Thank you. And we have Bahar Hanım. Would you like to say anything else? Thank you very much. When we talk about circular economy, we're talking about a product starting with its production and ending with the end of its life cycle. When we look at the changes, we see that there will be changes in accordance with demand, because when we talk about sustainability, EU aims to improve the use of the product and improve the resistance of the product, the resilience of the product, and it will take time to achieve this transformation. However, for the ready-to-wear sector, this doesn't mean demand will decrease. International organizations have made evaluations and it shows that consumption will increase in ready-to-wear sector. In order to adapt to these changes, we asked what kind of cooperation can be made, and I have an answer to that. And also, for all Mediterranean countries, what are the changes that circular economy might bring? I think the EU is now testing many applications. For instance, providing product as service. Certain policies are adapted in order to increase the life of a product, and adapting to these is important. There are certain cooperation efforts in the EU in progress, but they are just starting. Many of them are just starting. I think this should be taken seriously in Turkey and in the Mediterranean. And these changes will positively influence the companies, especially in terms of productivity. However, some investments, such as using alternative products rather than natural fiber, for instance, requires changes. So this requires R&D efforts. And in the Mediterranean, if we are to strengthen sustainability, we need to improve cooperation with Mediterranean countries, and e-trade can be another field that we can work on. We have a free trade network, but it is still not in practice in customs union with EU, for instance, and we can have closer cooperation in e-trade. And in terms of improving trade, more cooperation is possible. And Mr. Moro talked about initiatives regarding labeling and branding. Maybe this can be expected in Europe, and it can trigger localization, decentralization in Europe. I would like to thank all speakers and participants. We are at the end of our webinar. In 2021, we hope that the pandemic will end, and we hope to meet face-to-face in Meditex platform, and we hope to discuss a more sustainable and better future. Thank you.